For the last 12,000 years, Earth existed in the Holocene epoch. But in the year 2000, scientists began arguing that human activity had become the dominant force shaping geology and ecology. They proposed we are now living in the Anthropocene, an epoch defined by the scale and intent of our influence on the planet's systems. To find the historical markers for this acceleration, researchers trace the momentum of modern development. They point to the late 18th century, when factories first began mass-producing goods, and to the 1940s, with the dawn of the nuclear era, which left a permanent layer of radioactive isotopes in the Earth's rock. It is tempting to blame this massive ecological footprint entirely on human population growth, but the data reveals a different story. The crisis stems directly from specific choices made by modern societies, particularly in the global north, regarding how to interact with the environment. Rather than living within the planet's regenerative systems, we chose to overrule and exploit them. We built an economy that depletes finite mineral resources while altering the atmosphere. The Anthropocene is defined by this persistent choice to master nature rather than sustain it. This choice originates from a 17th century philosophical concept known as Cartesian dualism. It is the belief that human reason is entirely separate from and superior to a mindless, mechanical natural world. Viewing nature as an alien, mindless machine allowed expanding capitalist economies to treat the Earth as an external storehouse of cheap resources. Forests, minerals, and land were no longer complex living systems. They were raw materials to be extracted, cataloged, and mastered by industry. This mindset created a massive cultural blind spot. We built lives inside perfectly climate-controlled boxes, insulated from the soil and weather that actually produced our food. By pretending we were separate from nature, we ignored our absolute dependence on the biological webs keeping us alive. Trying to force natural cycles into strict, authoritarian systems of control leads to dangerous ecological breakdown. Scientists call the result a risk society, a civilization where the side effects of early modernization consistently threaten public safety and biological balance. Treating nature as a simple machine to be commanded left us blind to these cascading side effects. We ignored the damage until the cumulative cost of modernization began to disrupt the foundational cycles of the planet. Nowhere is this mechanical worldview more obvious than in post-World War II agriculture. In a drive for massive yields, farms were transformed into outdoor factories, relying on high-energy, mechanized systems and chemical inputs to conquer the soil. This rapid scaling was driven by a tight alliance between government policy, scientific research, and agricultural industry. This network pushed for extreme specialization and larger monoculture farms, effectively eliminating traditional mixed farming practices. Even the biological components of the farm were heavily modified to serve the machinery. Crops were bred to grow to identical heights for easier mechanical harvesting, and cows were genetically selected to possess udders specifically shaped to fit automatic milking robots. This chart reveals agriculture's massive ecological toll, driving 44 to 57% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Direct production accounts for just 11 to 15%. The rest stems from converting forests to farmland and the logistical webs of processing, packaging, and transporting products globally. The environmental movement first successfully exposed these toxic side effects in 1962, following the publication of Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. The book revealed how the widespread use of synthetic pesticides poisoned waterways and wildlife, bringing the hidden dangers of modern farming into public view. By viewing food production as a linear manufacturing process, industrial agriculture trades short-term increases in crop yields for the long-term destruction of the ecosystem services that make farming possible in the first place. An alternative framework exists that completely rejects this mechanical approach. It is called agroecology, a science that applies ecological principles to the design of agricultural systems, working alongside natural processes instead of overriding them with chemicals. One of the most widely practiced methods within this framework is permaculture. Developed in the 1970s, it focuses on whole systems thinking and bases its designs on the direct observation of how natural ecosystems function and thrive in the wild. A common permaculture design is the forest garden. Instead of a flat, single-crop field, this system uses multiple layers of diverse plant life, from ground cover crops up to fruit-bearing trees, to mimic the structure and self-sustaining nature of a mature woodland. By stacking functions, the system recycles its own wastes into nutrients. It maximizes genetic diversity to naturally resist pests and integrates plant and animal life to capture and store water without the need for synthetic fertilizers. This diagram illustrates the ethical framework that guides permaculture design. It centers on 3 clear directives: care for the earth by nurturing soil and preventing damage, care for people by ensuring access to healthy food, and fair share by limiting consumption and distributing surplus. These systems prove that humans do not need to separate themselves from biology to survive. We can satisfy our nutritional needs while actively restoring the biological health of the planet. The choice between these 2 paradigms is clear. The industrial model relies on a linear chain of extraction, chemical input, and toxic waste. The agroecological model functions as a closed loop, relying on recycling and biological synergy. When managed ecologically, soil ceases to be a net emitter of greenhouse gases. Through diverse planting and natural decomposition, the dirt beneath our feet has the capacity to sequester massive amounts of carbon, acting as the largest land-based carbon sink on the planet. Solving the crisis of the Anthropocene does not require more forceful technological domination of the environment. It requires a disposition of reflexive modernization, critically evaluating our practices and designing solutions that fit within natural ecological limits. Some popular narratives suggest we can invent our way out of this crisis using massive geoengineering projects, but treating symptoms with ever larger technological interventions simply repeats the same dualistic mistake that caused the problem in the first place. Genuine security comes from building systems that adapt to climate changes and naturally sequester carbon through living biology, rather than relying on invasive interference to manipulate the Earth's atmosphere. To survive the conditions we have created, we have to abandon the illusion that we are separate from the environment. We must move from acting as the masters of a mechanical world to living as participants in a biological one.